Guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here on 2023 preview and prediction for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Look at this coaching staff. Kirk Ferentz, he's been the lead man since 1999, 186 and 115 record all time. Son, Brian Ferentz, he's been on staff since 2020, seventh year in the role as offensive coordinator. Phil Parker, he's also been on the staff since 1999. Him and Ferentz have worked together a long time. Parker has been the defensive coordinator since 2012. Biggest headline for the Hawkeyes, Nick, is the long tenured staff. Seats are very hot for all these guys. This big potential change could potentially be on the way, similar to that of Wisconsin. Look at this offense, Nick, and the biggest headline really, again, is just this tenure is not really starting to pan out, and changes might be coming. Brian Ferentz, for example, the contract pay reduction has goals. He needs to hit 25 points per game and win 7 games to make $900K. I think he's currently slated to make $850 this upcoming season. Kirk said even if there was changes at the offensive coordinator position, it wouldn't be drastically different in terms of scheming. The program is being more than accommodating here, Nick, and I totally understand these guys have been around since before the turn of the century. But again, they're really handcuffed here, as you alluded to a couple days ago. The accommodation here, I think, is a little ridiculous because this is just not good for this program. The offense is a complete laughingstock, as you can see the numbers on screen. Brian Ferentz, only reason he's in this role really is because of his last name. What can they do here, if anything, to get back on track on this side of the ball? Because this is just a laughable situation at this point.
It really is just a joke. I mean, the numbers are absolutely pathetic. When you look at these numbers, 123rd in points per game, 130th in yards per game, 123rd in pass yards per game, and 124th in rush yards per game. Your best mark is 123rd in the nation. It's just absolutely terrible numbers, just laughable numbers. They're really pathetic. France has really faced controversy in the past for hiring his son, hiring his nephew, children-in-law, things like that. He's hired a lot of his family members to work in different roles, which is really interesting case of nepotism. Really seems to be like something that he gets away with at Iowa. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. This offense is just totally archaic and not great for the 21st century. They're handcuffed. I mean, Iowa has a good base. The defense, we're going to talk about it later. I mean, the defensive unit is fantastic. They're a really good unit, but they're handcuffed with an offense that can't score more than 10 points in a game. I mean, the points per game number, I feel like it should be lower than 17 points per game based off what I watched. It's been a disaster of an offense. I mean, their quarterback last year, Spencer Petras, had a 55% completion percentage and 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Just poor numbers. Iowa has to clean house and make a full change, in my opinion. I think this season they have to do it at the end of this season because they're not getting anywhere with Ferentz in charge. I know he's a legendary coach. He's been there for over 20 years, and I certainly respect that, and that is a very impressive achievement in this day and age. But if you want to be able to compete in the Big Ten, which Iowa certainly should be able to considering the defensive power they have, they're going to have to clean house, and they're going to have to get rid of themselves of the scandals and everything that's kind of come with this tenure that has produced a lot of wins, but it's produced a lot of scandals and a lot of terrible play as well.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Wisconsin did. The ceiling had been met. They got rid of Paul Chryst, and it ended up being great for them. Luke Fickell comes in. So there certainly is some brighter sun on the other side of the tunnel. You look at what they did in the portal. They lost 9 players, added 5, and they're hoping some of these guys from Michigan can get things turned around. Cade McNamara, he complimented the Wolverine running game well, mainly back in 2021 when he was the starter for the full time. He was smart with the ball, a good game manager. The ceiling seemed capped with him at quarterback, and that's something we said last year. J.J. McCarthy ended up being the starter right around the time we thought early on in September. Of course, Cade did get hurt, but I don't think it really mattered. I mean, I think that was just a good excuse for Harbaugh to go ahead and move on. Seems like a perfect fit for this offense, Nick. Doesn't say much, but I do think he's an upgrade over what they did have because he did play quite well, and I thought that this offense under Michigan finally started to, turn the page a little bit with McNamara. They went away from that one-dimensional aspect of their game. What are your thoughts on Cade, who really struggled over the final 3 games of that 2021 season? But again, I thought he was more than solid trying to get this offense in the right direction. You look at the Wolverines now, I think they're in a pretty good spot. He bridged them quite well.
I think he was a great bridge quarterback, good pocket passer, nice control, 64% completion percentage in 21 with Michigan. The TD to interception ratio, 15-6. It's not a bad ratio at all. I like the size, I like the presence in the pocket. I think he's a really good pocket passer, very good at kind of building the run game around him. This Iowa team does have a decent running unit we're going to talk about in a second, so I think they can build around that great game manager. The ceiling was capped at Michigan, but now he gets a new chance at Iowa where I think there is more room to grow. The ceiling kind of rises with a move to Iowa here. I think at Michigan it wasn't going to work. They had to switch to a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who just adds that extra dynamic for a team that has national championships aspirations. Iowa does not have those same aspirations. I think a guy like Cade McNamara could really succeed in this offense as a good pocket passer, game manager type of role.
In 2020, this rushing attack had about 171 yards per game. Some hard workers in the backfield for them. Last 2 years, they've taken a complete nosedive. The running back room, though, it's pretty solid. Caleb Johnson really shined at times last year, showcased some good breakaway speed. Hoping he can be the cowbell back for them. Le'Shawn Williams wasn't efficient really at all, but this is a solid duo if they can establish some presence up front. And that leads us to the offensive line. The unit has significantly gotten worse over the years. The Hawkeyes do have some versatility. That's due to them moving guys all over the place. Mason Richmond returns at left tackle. He was their best run blocker, 6'6", 308, struggled in pass pro. Nick Jong played 4 different positions. Likely slots in at left guard full-time, 6'6", 300. He was a below-average performer. Logan Jones played all 781 snaps at center. He's about 283 pounds. Bayou Stevens, he was quite awful for them at right guard, 6'6", 307. Jennings Dunker, he was pretty awful himself when he got time at right guard, so they certainly need to figure out that position. He's likely going to be the right tackle, though. Connor Colby, he played extensively at left guard and right tackle, but wasn't any better. He was not good as a pass blocker at all. Rusty Feith was a quite good player for Miami of Ohio, starter at center the last 2 seasons. They're hoping maybe he can get something involved. The O-line size was certainly a problem with the past couple seasons. That's just something I like to allude to, and it still isn't all that great. They got some height, but everyone seems to be under 310 pounds. That is not great at all for them. I do think they have some nice experience here. This is, even with Tyler Linderbaum 2 years ago, this is a unit that really struggled, Nick, mainly due to this size, and the development certainly went downhill. Very reminiscent of a Stanford team who runs a very similar scheme, and they're one of the worst programs in college football right now because the ancient offense has not worked out, the development has stalled, and that has led to some big problems.
These offenses are causing problems for programs like Iowa and Stanford, like you alluded to. The offensive line is just not the size they need to be, and they really do not make offensive linemen like they used to. They don't really fit the mold anymore. These guys don't have the size. I mean, they need to be above 310, some of these guys, and none of them are. I mean, look at Logan Jones. He's 283, just way too undersized for what they're going to try and work here. Bo Stevens, he needed to be a bigger size. Mason Richmond as well. These guys are just not the proper size for this offense. And this, it's part of the shift in the game, the generational shift, where a more passing focused, air raid sort of offenses are the kings. This offensive line is undersized. They have some good experience. These guys have got some good snaps, but they have to find a way to create better holes because, like you said, the 2 backs they have in Johnson and Williams are not bad. Johnson had a pretty decent season considering how bad the numbers were overall. He had 779 yards on the ground, 5.2 yards per carry, and 6 scores. Williams 412, 3.6, and two scores for him. So the numbers really need to improve, and it really starts the offensive line play, which was just dreadful this past season.
You look at the receiving core, not much here either. Nico Ragaini has showcased some nice hands in the past, has made athletic grabs. Deontay Vines, 6 foot, 198, only had 10 receptions last year. Alec Wick, redshirt sophomore out of Iowa City. Reese Osgood, 5'11", 176. Didn't see the field this past year, but I think the biggest reason why this offense is not an F, and I kept it right there in that C range, is because of this tight end duo. Leak Lachey, coming off a great year as the number 2 behind Sam Laporta. He's next in line as what is a perennial tight end factory. Pair him up with Michigan transfer Eric All. Perfect fit with his physicality, tough yards after catch, good route running. He has that good burst to threaten vertically. This tight end duo, again, might just save Iowa from having the worst pass catching group in the Power 5, Nick. That's a slight boost for them. These guys are certainly going to be big for them. And this is a very underrated positional group for Iowa. It's the really only one that's really strong in this offense. But the way they operate, they play tough defense. They get these, unexpected first downs that can extend these drives, and that helps them with time of possession. So even though that's all they have, Nick, this is something that really helps them win football games at times.
Ragaini's not a bad pass catcher, 386 yards this past season, 11.4 yards per catch, 1 score for him. Luke Lachey, a great physical tight end, perfect Iowa mold, nearly 400 yards receiving, 14.2 yards per catch, and 4 scores for him. They also bring in a talented piece out of the portal, like you said. So I think this is a decent tight end unit. Bringing in Eric All is a good fit physical player, nice after the catch as well. Dante Vines has some potential at his size as well. He could be involved this year. This unit's not great at all, but there are some talented individual pieces. I think Ragaini and Lachey are two nice pieces to have.
I usually answer the questions because they're on screen, but I'm going to ask you this time because I'm interested in your response. What's your grade for this unit, and what do they need to improve on?
I think this is a C-, D+ range unit. This unit is just poor. I've said it for a while that Iowa has to change it. I've been one that's dogged on Iowa for a while now. I mean, I love their defense, right? Their defense is phenomenal. They play hard-hitting football on defense, but their offense, it's just archaic. You can't watch it. It's miserable to watch, and it's not productive. It's not going to work. These numbers are pathetic. Like I said, the points per game, the yards per game, it's all pathetic. They have to make a schematic change soon, and that's the issue of Iowa, because I think if you make a schematic change, it's going to take a few years to catch back up with the rest of college football, and they will find themselves in a bit of a tough sort of purgatory if they try to do that. which is why I think they've stuck out so long with this, because they can still rattle off 8 wins a season with the way they are. I mean, they won 8 games in 2022, 10 in 2021, 6 in the COVID-shortened season. So they're getting results. It's just you're not going to break through and win the Big Ten if you play your offense like this. That's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, the new rules with the transfer certainly make a schematic change a little bit easier. It's one thing to note. Like you said, they're not going to change anything at all. So it is what it is. You look at the defensive side of the ball, though. If you're not going to change things on that side, you don't have to on this side. That's great news for Iowa. This is a team that returns 5 starters after an elite season, second in yards and points per game allowed. And these numbers are no fluke by any means. They did have a bit of a headache against Ohio State. They stonewalled their running game that day in that beatdown loss. They lose 3 other top 6 tacklers. All-American safety Kevon Merriweather departs also. 399 yards allowed versus Minnesota was the most allowed all season long. I do think Ohio State would have eventually probably toppled that total. No need to run it up, though, on the Hawkeyes. Snagged 15 interceptions, forced 23 turnovers. Phil Parker, his cover 2 shell defense is just immaculate. Look at the defensive line. Lucas Van Ness, a player that departs after being a big-time player for them over the past couple seasons. Super senior Noah Shannon, he's back to anchor this unit up front. 289-pound run stopper. Logan Lee was the 5th leading tackler. He also showcased that same force versus the run. Aaron Graves provided some good reps, but really struggled as a tackler as a whole. Yaya Black, on the other hand, was very strong in that category. Really good experience on the 2 deep on this interior D-line, Nick. Look at this pass rush again. Van Ness departs. Deontay Craig, he was a great producer at only 325 snaps. Very efficient edge defender there. Joe Evans, this is a guy I seem to mention every single year, and he's still around. He showcased great efficiency. Another one of these super seniors. Ethan Hucker had some good experience. Max Leolin at 6'5", 243. Only played in 3 games as a redshirt freshman. But again, really good defensive line depth and experience. And I think the production certainly checks out also. Phenomenal defensive line, Nick, even if these guys won't be playing on Sundays.
Fantastic production here. Great unit overall. Deontay Craig, 31 total tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks for him. Very good numbers out of him coming off the left side. Noah Shannon, good veteran leadership, 44 total tackles for him, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him. Good numbers out of him overall. Ethan Harkett, limited snaps, but he had 15 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack for him, which is not bad production out of him. Logan Lee's another guy with good production, 53 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks for him. He had 3 pass breakups. He can get his hand up and block the ball down if necessary. Joe Evans, 8.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 41 total tackles for him. I mean, the numbers go on and on here, this production. Aaron Graves, a sophomore, he played very limited snaps, but he had 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 16 total tackles as a true freshman. He has all the potential in the world at left defensive tackle to be involved this season. This unit is so deep. There is so much talent here. This is a great pass rush. Yes, they lose Lucas Van Ness, but I think they have so much potential here to replace guys and get after the quarterback. This is a very scary good unit.
Look in the middle of their defense. A bit of turnover here. Seth Benson, Jack Campbell. They combined for 222 tackles last year. Justin Jacobs transfers out. Jay Higgins next up in the middle, though. These linebackers usually tasked with being quick to diagnose versus the run and shoot gaps and to be able to drop into coverage with fluidity. Kyle Fisher was good in his limited snaps, has been a valuable asset on special teams. Biggest add here, the only add in the portal on this side of the ball, Nick Jackson, an elite tackler over his 4 years at Virginia, was a strong run defender at times. The Cavaliers always seem to produce some nice individual talents on that side of the ball. Jackson is one of them. 6 foot 237. Really going to be a great player here for Iowa. Really probably going to save this linebacking core. I'm not sure how much the depth will be, this season. I'm not sure how good it will be or if it will plague them. Usually it doesn't, especially when you have this D-line up front. Not really concerned about them. They're certainly not going to be as good as last year, Nick. Jack Campbell, I think he was the Conference Player of the Year. High-end first-round pick, too. Bit of a reach there by the Lions, but a lot of people love Jack Campbell as an old-school football player. That's certainly going to be missed.
Player I was very high on at the start of last season. I love Jack Campbell. You and I both liked him at the start of last season. Tough to replace that production, but Jay Higgins, next man up mentality. That's something they do on this Iowa defense. Next man up, get involved with it. Higgins is a good player. 40 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, plus a half a sack for him. He is going to be involved early on. They made some work. They brought in Nick Jackson, huge ad from Virginia. Good player, and Kyle Fisher, limited snaps. Like you said, very valuable in special teams. Maybe he'll step into a more of a starting role this year. This is a very good unit in terms of what they have in terms of raw potential talent.
And you look at the secondary unit, it's certainly flourished over the past couple of years. It's really been the staple of this program. Cooper DeJean, high-energy player with great toughness, outside at cornerback, violent hands, really redirects pass catchers, good agility, has aggressiveness against the run. Certainly needs to continue to refine his technique, though. Was a good productive player this past season. Certainly showcasing his ball skills with 8 pass breakups and 5 interceptions. 3 of them he took to the house for some points there. Much needed points for the Hawkeyes, that is. The rest of this unit, Sebastian Castro, really strong in the slot. He's back. He should get better. Riley Moss departs, so they'll need to establish his replacement. Terry Roberts also hit the portal a few times this offseason. Jeremiah Harris was pretty strong as an outside cornerback in 2021. He missed all of last year. He's going to battle with redshirt freshman Deshaun Lee. So I'm a little worried about CB2 and his replacement. The scheme's kind of friendly for some youthful players. Xavier Nwankpa, former 5-star, mainly got to go versus Kentucky. He was highly impressive in that game. That was a real stagnated offense, though, so it's not get carried away. Quinn Schlutt was an elite tackler. Really good run defender for them at his safety position. TJ Hall, he was poor in his few games. Safety depth is something to monitor. The overall well-coached unit, Nick, I'm not worried about them one bit. Dijon's going to be great for them. I think the safeties they have are certainly going to step up this year. I'm not sure if they're going to really step back or not. I'd expect them to once again be in that top 15 range in pass defense. They were 6th last year. The defensive line they have up front certainly makes the task even easier. What are the expectations for the back end here?
Cooper DeJean's a great player, high energy, fantastic player. 5 picks this past season, 8 pass breakups, 75 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Good numbers for him. Quinn Shuttle as well. 72 total tackles, 6 pass breakups. Nice, hard-hitting player. Good player to have in your secondary, a free safety. I like him to move around. Sebastian Castro, 33 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss. 1 sack, 5 pass breakups, not bad. Xavier Nwankpa, like you said, high-end 5-star, 12 total tackles, 1 pick, and limited appearances. Looked good in the bowl game against Kentucky. This is a good unit. I think there is a little bit of lack. I worry about the cornerback too, like you said. But overall, I think these guys are hard-hitting. These guys get after the ball. This is a very good unit.
A-plus unit indeed for me. Not much to really worry about other than CB2, maybe some depth in the secondary, but, not really that worried. This team typically stays pretty healthy. They're incredibly physical. They're tough up front. That's really going to be the tone setter for them regardless of what happens with the rest of the unit. A-plus for me, Nick. Would you go ahead and say that? I mean, with the amount of plays they're on the field, of how bad their offense is, these guys have really got to feel like the weight on their shoulders is pretty immense, and they seem to respond time and time again. This is just an amazing unit, Phil Parker Fields.
I got to imagine they wish their offense could just give them a little bit of rest in the sidelines, constantly having to go back out on the field, defend that turf. Fantastic defense. I mean, 2nd in points per game this past season, 2nd in yards per game. A fantastic pass defense as well. Good tackles, which certainly worries me. But I still think this is an A-plus unit. It's on the lower end of the A-plus for me because they lose their top 2 tacklers. But overall, fantastic unit. So much depth, so much production potential. These guys are hard hitters. Very good unit.
Looking at the schedule preview and prediction, Iowa's a real trendy pick. They hit its over total, it seems, this offseason. The offense has one of the nation's best tight end duos, but that's about it. The experience back up front is notable, but size is still an issue, and they've gotten worse over the last 3 years. Every single season they've regressed. Matt McNamara, he will give them slightly better play at quarterback, but the ceiling isn't high for this offense one bit. Defense will once more be flat-out elite. Another year, what's the same old? But I do ask you, Nick, how good does this offense have to be for them to win this conference? Plus money on the over 8.5, but no way in hell I'd ever bet money on this team with this offense. But again, how good do they have to be for them to, reach those lofty goals they seem to be falling short of?
They have to be 50% better at least. I think this offense needs to find a significant pulse. They want to get above 8 wins, which I think that's what Iowa wants, right? Iowa wants 8 wins in a bowl game every year. They're accepting that out there in Iowa. That's what they want. They want to hit that level and just be happy with that. I think, this team should be doing better with a new coach. They would be doing a lot better. But 8 wins is respectable. I guess if you want to be that program, you could be that program. That's fine. I'm not going anywhere near this over. I know it's plus money, but betting money on Iowa just seems like you're pissing money down the drain and would be a really concerning thing. I just cannot be comfortable putting that. They could surprise people and make a run for the conference. It's certainly possible. The schedule is favorable in most regards. They do not have to play Michigan or Ohio State, which certainly helps when you're trying to make a run for the conference title. At Penn State, yeah, obviously it's going to be difficult. At Wisconsin, very difficult as well. But outside of that, not a bad schedule. A lot of home games for this team. So certainly a very nice schedule. And if they get this offense somehow cooking and potentially be 50% better than it was last year, they could find themselves in the hunt to win that division.
And if you look at the schedule, all the ones in green, very easy opponents. And then you look at the ones they're losing to, those are opponents they can actually match up quite well with. So I certainly think they could easily squeak out an over and potentially a lot more. But it's just not a tough schedule, so 8 wins there, mainly because of this defense. Last year, they won 7-3 in the opener against South Dakota State. Embarrassing. I think they had 2 safeties in that game. Iowa State, they lost the next week 7-10. They lost 6-9 to Illinois later on in the year. It's just an interesting team. It's kind of fun to laugh at. It's kind of fun to see the way they win, though, Nick. So certainly interested to see what happens long term with Ferentz and crew. It's hard to get rid of a coach who definitely wins 8 to 10 games every single year. But something's got to change here if they want to get any better. Appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Iowa is a very interesting case. It's really not funny to talk about this team from time to time. They win, they win their games. They get 8 wins pretty much every year. They're very consistent in that. They haven't had below 7 wins outside of the COVID short season since 2012. So they pick up a lot of wins. It's just an archaic offense that's tough to watch. I will not be tuning to a lot of Hawkeyes games this year.
That's for sure. Unless they're on a night game on Fox or something against a tough opponent, certainly worth a little peek. But yeah, not much really in terms of excitement. It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.